listening to MMA Think Tank with Jay and Mike.
Welcome to the MMA Think Tank. I am your host, Jay. Along with me, as always, is my co-host, Mike. Mike, unfortunately, this week I'm a little under the weather, so you're going to have to bear with me.
Yeah, I can bear with you, man. I'm just happy you're on the air, and if you wouldn't have come on, I would have understood, dude. So
Yeah.
you're a big trooper.
Yeah. As they say in showbiz, the show must go on, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Anyway, as for shows, we saw one last night in Fight Night 74, Charles Oliveira versus Max Holloway. Mike, let's delve right into that fight. What did you think about that fight?
Yeah, it was good for as long as it lasted. It only lasted a minute. Both guys were striking really well. Oliveira went in for a takedown, the submission ace that he is, looking for that. Holloway shirked it off, stood up. But when Oliveira stood up, he grabbed his shoulder region, and he called it off. And Herb Dean, called the fight off officially.
Yeah, I was pretty upset at that. It's not like Charles Oliveira to stop fighting, so I knew he was hurt. But, up until that point, it was a really good fight. I mean, it started to get going, and Max Holloway was starting to tee off as well. And it was looking like it was going to be a great fight, definitely.
Yeah, Max Holloway was doing what he's supposed to do. He was kind of cutting angles, moving around. He shirked the takedown. It's still early to tell. We don't know how it would have went, but
yeah.
I want to see that fight again if they have it. If they decide to move Holloway up the ladder more, that's fine as well.
Yeah.
But Jay, he called out Frankie Edgar at the end. What do you think of that?
Yeah. And you were telling me of some news earlier today that Frankie Edgar, I guess, would accept that fight. And
Twitter.
I think that fight would be awesome. Personally, I think that's the right move for Max Holloway right now. Now, as far as Charles Oliveira goes, have you heard what happened to him? What exactly was going on with that?
Yeah, I read on one of the websites that it might have been a micro tear to the esophagus, though I read on another website that Oliveira said he wasn't told that. So,
okay.
But it's a significant injury if it's not treated. It's one of those things where fluid, food can go through to the lungs.
Yeah.
So it's something that they got treated quickly and good for the UFC for being on top of it.
Yeah, and good for Charles Oliveira, knowing that he was hurt enough to just stop, that he didn't go on. But as far as that fight goes, I wouldn't mind if they rematched that fight again. It was looking like an excellent fight up until that point. So if a rematch comes, would you be upset?
No, I wouldn't be upset. The way I look at it is, that division already has a lot of contenders, and it has a lot of fights that can happen in either order. For Oliveira's sake, I hope he gets the rematch. But if we do go Holloway versus Frankie Edgar, that's a fantastic fight.
Yes, it is.
Not Holloway, I'm sorry. Frankie Edgar also said he would fight Jeremy Stephens because both of them have called him out. So there's a lot of things going on in that division.
Yeah, and I could see possibly that Stephens Edgar fight happening while they're setting up a rematch for Holloway and Oliveira. I wouldn't doubt that would happen, but who knows with the UFC? They've been making some strong moves lately, and one in which I don't totally agree with, and we'll get into that later. Let's continue on with this Fight Night 74 card.
We kind of had a letdown there in the main event, because of the injury. But, my fight of the night was a fight before that, the co-main event of Neil Magny versus Eric Silva. I realized that it didn't win fight of the night from the UFC brass. But to me, that was just a fantastic fight.
It was.
Jay, what did you think?
Yeah, it was a fantastic fight. Neil Magny showed up. And, unfortunately for Neil, his last fight, he lost, of course. And it was a bit of a shocker, but I guess not really against Damian Maia, but it still shocked me that because Damian pretty much, took him out. And
that's what shocked me was just how dominant.
And that's what I'm getting at. But as far as this fight goes, Eric Silva was bringing it. So was Neil, and it was just an exciting fight. And I agree with you. I think it was fight of the night. Yeah,
it was a split decision, Jay. I'm going to read a couple of things here that I saw. I went with Silva. I went with the one judge that scored it 29-28 for Silva. Before I get to kind of my notes, what did you who did
Eh,
you score it for?
honestly, for me, it could have went either way. So I wasn't upset with the decision at all, and I'm happy for Neil.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Neil Magny as well. And the round in question for me was a third round, and I wrote down close round.
Yeah.
So either way, it was fine. But the first round, both guys, they traded takedowns and positions. But in the end, Neil Magny had his back, at the end of the round.
Yeah.
So, I gave that to Magny. When it comes to round two, just striking, they were striking in the clinch, striking, with Silva, had a takedown. But he didn't have it for very long. So I went with Silva in that one because, he just had the better striking that round. But, it came down to the third round. And, I could see that fight again. I don't really
Yeah.
I know we don't need to see it, but it was
Yeah.
that great of a fight.
Did you say it wasn't that great of a fight, Mike?
No, it was that great of a fight.
Okay.
If I
thought
made a
heard-
mistake,
Yeah.
yes, thank you for correcting me.
I thought that you said that, but anyway, yeah, it was a fantastic fight. I wouldn't mind seeing those guys trade again, but Neil won. Just like you said, barely split decision, but he won, and kudos
On
to
short
him.
notice too.
Yeah, exactly. And he just fought Damian Maia 2 months ago?
It was this month, I think.
Oh wow!
I think it was that. It was either the Rousey card or one of the fight nights.
Yeah,
so
it might have been like
within
Fight
the month.
Night 72. Yeah,
Maybe.
I don't know. That's crazy, but good for him. Good for him.
Yeah, it was like 22 days. I remember reading.
All right. So who else we got that you wanted to talk about there on this card?
Well, you know what? That was my fight of the night, Jay. I'm pretty sure you said that was probably your fight of the night.
Yeah, it was.
Well, the actual fight of the night was Patrick Cote versus Josh Berkman, and it was a great fight too. There's not like this was a robbery of a fight of the night or anything.
It was, but
Go ahead.
I have some words to speak on this fight. The reason why it wasn't fight of the night for me is because Josh Berkman just didn't look all that great to me. I thought it was sort of one-sided, really. I mean, they traded back and forth a few times, but let's be honest. Patrick Cote looked to be the more technical fighter, the fighter that was landing the better shots. He looked to be on point, whereas Josh Berkman just seemed to be a little sloppy. I don't know if you saw that, but that's the way I looked at that fight.
I don't know if I'd say it's sloppy, but I completely agree with you that Cote was winning the fight overall. I mean, it was kind of close in the first round until Cote landed the big right that wobbled Berkman with like 10 seconds left. And I don't think Berkman was going to go down at that point, but he certainly stole the round with that. And then the second round, I did give it to Berkman, but then it didn't matter because the third round, it was a big bomb from Cote and finished it on the ground with strikes. And
But what I'm getting at is Josh Berkman looked to be so sloppy in this fight that at any moment I saw Cote landing just a big shot and taking him out, and it happened, and I kind of saw that coming. I know in the first round he stumbled him, and I just thought he was going to knock him out soon after that. I'm surprised it went to the third round. That's what I'm getting at. I'm surprised it went to the third round.
Yeah, the reason I hear what you're saying on that. The reason I gave Berkman the second round was basically because of the takedowns and side mount and things like that. The things he did on the ground. But yeah, Jay, when he was on the feet, it was clearly Patrick Cote pushing the action, landing the better shots.
Yeah.
And even in the third round, they went, man, the third round opened and they just went rock'em sock'em robots, as the commentators like to say, for 30 seconds. They touched gloves right after that, show respect to each other. 10 seconds later, like you said, Cote came in, boom, just right hand over. That's it.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately,
And he called out Lombard too.
Yeah. And I'd like to see that fight with a human Lombard. That is, and when I say human, I mean, the non-roided out Lombard. So, yeah, I'd love to see that fight. And Cote seems to be getting better. Cote really looks like this is his weight that he should be at, and kudos to him. He's been around for a while, and it's good to see somebody like him actually getting better and doing his thing.
Yeah, it was something I wrote on the Facebook too, which was this: if he gets to the welterweight championship to fight for it, and I don't think he will. It's a murderer's row in that top five. The welterweight division is the second best in the UFC, and it's really close to being the first. Lightweights being the biggest. But Patrick Cote fought Tito Ortiz many years ago for the light heavyweight championship. Then he ended up fighting Anderson Silva at middleweight. So if he gets to the welterweight title shot, I think that's the first guy in UFC history to do that. That'd be pretty crazy.
Yeah, that'd be pretty amazing.
Jay, I'm a big fan of Patrick Cote, but I'm also a big fan of Chad Laprise. And, it didn't go his way last night because, he got into the cage with Francisco Trinaldo. Round one, they threw a couple of punches, and then Chad Laprise gets just knocked down and pounded out very quickly.
I thought Trinaldo.
What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I thought Trinaldo looked excellent. I've never seen this fighter before, I'll be honest, but he looked excellent in that fight. I was shocked because I know you've been a fan of Laprise, and I'm not too familiar with him, as this was I guess he was from Tough Nations, and I didn't see
he's a winner of Tough Nations.
As a cord cutter, I was unable to see that, and I wasn't familiar with him or Trinaldo, and just by watching that fight, I thought Trinaldo looked like he had a great game, and obviously had a great game plan going in against Laprise, and he took him out.
Yeah, Trinaldo's one of those guys that, he was in the first season of Tough Brazil, and he's been a very good fighter since then. He hasn't fought, the big names, but neither has Chad Laprise. He's been kind of on the Canadian cards, whereas Francisco Trinaldo's kind of been on a lot of the Brazilian cards. So I knew it was going to be a tough fight for Chad. I still thought he was gonna get this fight, but it didn't surprise me that he lost. But you know what? It just shows one guy from Tough, is moving ahead, and one guy's got a setback. Both the guys just got to go from here, and let's see where they go.
Yeah. They're still young in their career, and they both got time to grow and move on from this. So we'll see what happens with Laprise and Trinaldo. It'll be exciting to watch.
Yeah, and speaking of Tough Nations, the guy that Chad Laprise lost to in the finals, Olivier Aubin-Mercier, he fought the fight before that, and he fought Tony Sims. And it was a pretty one-sided fight, Jay. Tony Sims, he's a game opponent. He was doing the best he could, but most of it was Olivier just getting the takedowns, going to side mount, getting, the body triangle, going for chokes. He never got it. But it was all one-sided, Jay. That's what I thought. What did you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. It was all one-sided.
I think one thing this also shows us is that it's where Chad Laprise is and where, Mercier is. Or I should say Aubin-Mercier. He's got a hyphen in his name. Laprise had the better fight, or he had the harder fight. He couldn't get it done. Mercier, he did what he was supposed to do. He was supposed to go in there and submit the guy. He didn't submit the guy, but he showed basically, all fight, he was in control, and at any moment he was going to get that sub. So it's going to be interesting to see where those guys go from here. And the last fight on the main card was the Miran Moroz versus Valerie Letourneau, and Jay, that was the upset of the night, I guess, because if we remember, Moroz was the one that knocked out Joanne Calderwood in her last fight. Not Calderwood's last fight, but in Moroz's last fight, she knocked her out, and she didn't show up for Letourneau, I guess. What did you think?
Yeah, it was obvious that Letourneau won all 3 rounds, but it was still a good fight.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the inverted triangle that Moroz put on Letourneau, Letourneau, worked out of that. To the bell, she didn't get submitted. There's a lot of exciting things in the fight, but Letourneau, she turned it on and won all the rounds, in my opinion.
Yeah. It wasn't just your opinion. It was the opinion of the judges as well. So, yeah, so
not
Letourneau
always
wins.
the same, Jay. You know that.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, Mike. So on from this card, let's get into some talk on some upcoming future fights.
Yeah, there's been a lot of great fights coming out from the UFC. Also Bellator and World Series of Fighting. But let's keep it with the UFC first. Mirko Cro Cop is fighting Anthony Hamilton in South Korea, Ultimate Fight Night 79. I know Hamilton. He's not that big of a heavyweight contender. Obviously, he's 2-2. He hasn't fought many big guys except for Todd Duffy, who he lost to. And we know Crow Cop. The diehards. We know Crow Cop. We love Crow Cop. A lot of us think Crow Cop should hang it up. Some of us want to see him fight longer. Jay, what do you think of that?
I'm one of those guys that think Crow Cop needs to hang it up. I thought he did hang it up. I don't understand why he's still fighting. I really don't. How old is he now? Do you know, Mike? He's got to be in late 30s, right?
Yeah, he's late 30s. He might even be 40. So I don't know exactly. But his heyday was back in Pride, back in the mid 2000s. So he keeps coming back because the UFC keeps saying, "Hey, do you want to fight? Because I can. You can fight on an Asian card."
I just looked it up, folks, and he's 40 years old. So, man, I'm 40 years old. I can't see myself fighting, anybody at this point. But I am not a professional fighter, so. But 40 years old, getting into the cage against any man, I don't care who it is. That's nuts.
And Hamilton's a lot younger. He may not be super skilled, but he's still a big young guy who can knock you out.
Is Crow Cop one of those guys who's ever been involved with TRT, or is he just been winging it, just going?
No, nothing's been like that. That's one of the reasons people liked him back in Pride is that he came in as an undersized heavyweight.
Yeah.
And just, the whole right kick cemetery, left kick hospital.
Yeah.
That whole thing, it's such a great thing to say. Just it promotes fights very easily.
Yeah.
But it is Pride, Jay. So we've heard some things about Pride in the past. So
yeah. But as far as he goes, like, he just doesn't strike me as a guy that's big on roids. You know what I'm saying? His physique and stuff. He's never looked like he's been a massive guy at all. So. But no, I was just wondering if he's ever done the, when it was legal, the TRT, in the MMA. I was wondering because of his age.
Yeah, his age is just because I think he can't give it up. A lot of athletes, it's hard to give it up. And, the UFC knows this, and the UFC will continue to put him on cards that are in Asia since he was big in Asia and Japan, obviously with Pride. So they're going to keep feeding him some guys he can beat, and they know they'll sell tickets. So
yeah, well, hopefully he can beat this guy, Who knows? Hamilton may show up and beat him.
Yeah, I'm rooting for Crow Cop in this. I'm an old diehard guy that likes to see these guys fight until they're just getting knocked on their head. I don't want anybody to go to the hospital.
Yeah, I understand. I like Crow Cop as well, but at the same time, I don't want to see him get hurt. So I think this should be his last fight.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't have a problem with it. But, Jay, he might fight till 45. You just never know with these guys.
That's crazy. Anyway, who else do you have, Mike? What upcoming fight do you have?
Yeah, also on the South Korean card. Well, the main event is Benson Henderson and Thiago Alves. But we talked about that on Blab earlier, or I should say last week. But what I think could be fight of the night is the other one, which is Dong Hyun Kim versus George Masvidal. And George Masvidal, he's one of those guys that even though he's not ranked, I think he's probably the best unranked guy in the division. And, in Stun Gun, Dong Hyun Kim, he's a guy that his losses, he's only lost to 3 people. And that's Damian Maia, Carlos Condit, and there was one more guy, I might be blanking here, but they're all top 5 guys.
Wow. I'm surprised you're blanking.
So this guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I'm surprised you're blanking. And let me correct you there. It's Jorge Masvidal. I know Americans will say George, but yes, it's Jorge Masvidal is what it is. He
has said he can go either way, and I don't know which way to say.
Are you saying he swings both ways? Phonetically, I guess,
I don't know
right?
if I'll go that far, but
no. But Jorge Masvidal, I've been a big fan of Strikeforce for many years. I watched the promotion, and Jorge Masvidal was one of those guys I was a fan of in Strikeforce. So having him come to the UFC, he's won some and lost some, but overall he's looked good. And against Dong Hyun Kim, I think that this fight is going to be a good one. It's going to be explosive. I think they both got great stand-up, good ground game. Masvidal especially has a great ground game, and I think that's probably where he'll take it. I think he'll take Kim down and try to submit him.
I think that's his best attempt at winning the fight. And Jay, I just clicked over to the Facebook page, and it's Tyron Woodley was the third guy. So again, these are guys that Dong Young Kim, he's beating guys that aren't in the top 5. And you know what, George Jorge Masvidal, he's not in the top 5. He's outside the top 10. So I'm excited for this fight because I really think it can be fight of the night because Masvidal always brings it.
Yeah.
Kim looks good, but he's kind of a front runner. In my opinion, if he gets hurt or gets a little stumbly, and I don't mean by strikes, I mean just the whole fight, he rarely comes back. But he's stun gun for a reason. He's going to stop you from getting to the guys that he hasn't beat yet. And I don't know who I'm picking in this fight. I'm just excited for it.
Yeah, me too. Now, Mike, there was some news that Jason High was just signed with the World Series of Fighting. What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's a great signing by the World Series of Fighting. Jason High is a really good fighter. He's kind of like Jorge Masvidal. He's not he's not top 10 per se, but he's a guy that always brings it, an exciting fighter. He's fought all over the world, literally. The guy fought. He's fought in the UFC. He's fought in Strikeforce. He's fought in Dream when Dream was around. So this is an excellent pickup, and it just makes the lightweight division a lot better now for the World Series of Fighting with Justin Gaethje, Nick Newell. They just signed somebody else. It's just a few different people that, the division's getting bigger.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that the World Series of Fighting is actually getting better than Bellator. You know what I'm saying? In terms of fighters, the caliber of fighters, I think World Series of Fighting is doing the right thing. I think they're making the right moves. I really think they're going to be second to the UFC pretty soon, if they're not already when it comes to the caliber of fighters, excuse me.
Yeah, Jay, I agree with you. And there's some sort of unspoken agreement, I think, between the UFC and the World Series of Fighting. Kind of, you send your guys over here, and if they get a little better, we'll send them back to the UFC or something like that. I don't know. It just seems to be that way. Bellator is a great organization. But the World Series of Fighting, I agree. There's just something there, and is it going to be the next WEC? I don't know, but it sure is fun to watch. And if you don't have an NBC Sports Channel, try and get it to watch these guys.
Yeah, I don't have it, but I have my ways of finding these fights. So let's just leave it at that.
Well, no, I'll just add something just very easily. Is that most of the fights they'll put online on their website. So guys, if you don't have that channel, you can find it on their website.
Yeah, that's really cool. Is there any other news with World Series of Fighting? You were telling me about something.
Yeah, it's kind of exciting. This goes along with some Bellator stuff we'll talk about later. Because Bellator, they released some news about a tournament. Well, you know what? It looks like World Series of Fighting is going to double that. Instead of a 4-night tournament, they're going to do, not a 4-night tournament. Instead of a 4-man tournament, they're going to do an 8-man lightweight tournament at World Series of Fighting 25.
Wow.
And whoever wins this tournament is going to be the number 1 contender to take on the winner of Justin Gaethje and Luis Palomino and
awesome.
their rematch. So, really quickly, it's a harkens back to the old UFC days, but it's being done in Washington, Seattle, Washington. So they don't have to go with the whole California Athletic or Las Vegas, or Nevada Athletic Commission. So they can do more rounds and more fights in one day because. It's going to be interesting to see how they get around that, but evidently it looks like Seattle is going to let them get around a certain amount of rounds in a day.
Cool. That sounds really interesting and promising. I look forward to it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I like all MMA. Jay, I know you do as well. And if I can get what I get in the UFC, that's great. If I get something different in the World Series of Fighting or Bellator, that's great too. Iron sharpens iron, and more eyeballs on the sport is great, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Moving over to Bellator, Mike, any news on that front?
Yeah, Bellator 144, they've just added 2 really good fights. I say really good fights because we don't know who's fighting these 2 fighters. But the fighters that are fighting that have signed for Bellator 144 is Michael Page and Brennan Ward. And if you guys watch Bellator, these guys are fantastic fighters, and I'm excited to see what happens here. This could be, the next contender, whoever wins this fight. Page is undefeated. He's been making guys look just silly in the ring. So if he wins his fight against the to-be-determined opponent, my guess is he'll be the next guy, to fight for the title. But if he loses, Brennan Ward wins, maybe he'll fight for the title next. But I'm really excited about those 2 guys fighting.
Yeah, Michael Page definitely he's a great fighter. As far as Brennan Ward, I like Brennan Ward, but he's been up and down. Especially lately. I think he won his last couple fights, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he lost a couple in a row before that. And
yeah, he did it, and that was at middleweight. But the last two he's won has been since he's dropped to welterweight.
Yeah. Okay. That you're exactly right. Maybe that he's fighting at the weight he should be right now. Then,
Right.
I'm actually looking him up right now, and yes, he did lose his last. Well, he won his last two by submission and KO, but the two before that he was subbed and KO'd. Isn't that ironic?
Right.
So yeah, maybe Brendan Ward has found the right weight to fight at, and you know what? I'm excited to see those fights. So yeah, Bellator 144 is looking like a great card.
Yeah, and I think Andrei Koreshkov, the welterweight champ, he's got his hands full coming up with some contenders for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Also in the news, Mike, we have another fight to talk about. Joanna Champion herself, Jędrzejczyk herself, is fighting Claudia Gadelha again. This will be Claudia's second fight with Joanna, and that first fight was very close, and
Yeah, it was.
an amazing fight to boot. Just a huge fan of Joanna, a huge fan. I think she's amazing to watch. It doesn't matter, male or female. I take that out of the equation when I watch her fight. It's like with Ronda Rousey. It's the same thing. I watch these two, and I just see a fighter. That's what I see in the ring. I don't see a woman. I see a fighter. And she really brings it, and I'm excited for this one. How about you?
I'm very excited as well. Jędrzejczyk, she finishes fights, man. She's not just winning these fights on decision or just dominating. She's finishing girls, and kind of like Ronda Rousey is right now. And Claudia Gadelha, man, it's hard not to be a fan of hers too. She seems really humble. She's maybe got more of a complete game than Jędrzejczyk does, but Jędrzejczyk just, she's got the upper hand, I think, this time as well. I'm excited.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you say Gadelha or Gadelha. I'm not sure. Do you know for sure how you say that?
There's an L in there somewhere, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's silent or what. I don't know. But in any case, I guess it doesn't really matter at this point. If we're saying it wrong, it's not like we're talking to her right now. But
hey, we got Jędrzejczyk right, so I think we're golden for the rest of the hour.
Yeah, exactly. But as far as Claudia goes, she really is a complete fighter. She's also really fun to watch, and she's got some good hands. And since she lasted, all 3 rounds with Jędrzejczyk before, anything could happen in this fight. We could see Joanna actually lose her first fight, but at the same time, I still don't think so. I think Joanna wins this fight again, but it's going to be close. It's going to be a fight that if Claudia wins, I wouldn't be super surprised.
Yeah, Claudia took a really hard one on the chin, I think in the 3rd round, that I think really lost her the fight. She got knocked down. She didn't get knocked out. She was able to get right back up. But I think that's what gave Jędrzejczyk the fight. And I agree, Jay. This strawweight division, win or lose on this fight, is just such an exciting division. Don't you think?
Yeah, oh, definitely. And but wouldn't you agree that it could be anybody's fight in this particular fight? I mean, Claudia has a chance.
Yeah, this is exactly anybody's fight. I lean towards Jędrzejczyk, but Claudia wins this fight. That's not a surprise at all. Now, if Claudia wins it in the first round, that's a surprise. It all depends on how far it goes or what it looks like, obviously.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying if Claudia wins this fight, it's most likely by decision. But as for a finish, if anybody was to finish this fight, I would lean towards Joanna finishing Claudia. But Claudia's got a chin. Claudia was tagged several times during their first fight. So I'll be surprised if anybody gets finished. I say this still goes to a decision and Joanna win. That's what I would pick.
Well, let's remember now, this rematch, assuming that's what they're going with, it looks like Jędrzejczyk is defending the belt at 195. There has been no official word that Claudia is going to do it, or going to be the fighter to fight her. But it's pretty much a done deal, it seems like. But this will be 5 rounds, not 3, and that's what's more exciting, Jay.
Yeah.
We had a great 3-round fighter. Bring on 5 rounds.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't really think about that. somebody can get finished in this fight. But like you said, I'm leaning towards Johanna finishing the fight.
Yeah, Jay, did you want to go on to the main event that's on there, or do you want to talk about anything else before we get to that main event?
Oh, go ahead and talk about it.
The main event is Ronda Rousey at 195. January 2nd, my birthday, people. So, it's a great birthday present for me. It's Ronda Rousey versus Miesha Tate. Wait, no, it's not. It's Ronda Rousey versus Nunes. No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's Ronda Rousey versus Holly Holm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
I
Jay,
love
I'll
the
let
way
you
you
go
started
first,
that.
And I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to agree and disagree at the same time.
I love how you started that, because you mentioned two women who should be fighting her over Holly Holm, in my opinion. I'm really upset with this. Now, I didn't want to see a Tate Rousey 3. I really didn't. Not right now, anyway. I think Tate has gotten better with her hands. At the same time, I still don't think she's ready. So maybe give her another fight, then go fight Rousey. I could see that. And the reason why I say that is because I don't think whoever Rousey faces, she's going to lose to at this point. So Tate has time to get even better and come back and fight Rousey. Because let's face it, Tate was the only one to actually get Rousey into later rounds. And I really think that this was just a bad move by the UFC, picking Holly Holm to fight. I don't know what it is. Honestly, I'm looking at this stuff on... I'm looking at the wiki page right now, and I'm looking at Amanda Nunes's fights, and she 3 fights ago she lost to Kat Zingano.
No slouch.
No slouch. It was due to elbows and punches, TKO. But she beats Shayna Baszler, but it's Shayna Baszler. She's old and kind of washed up. Not really old, but seasoned, we'll say.
Yeah.
And then she subbed Sarah McMahon pretty fast. And Amanda Nunes looks to be a better fighter, in my opinion, right now in the UFC than Holly Holm. I would pick Amanda Nunes to fight over Holly Holm in this next fight against Rousey. I don't understand what the UFC is thinking right now. The only conclusion I can come to, Mike, is when I look at all these fighters. I'm looking at them right now. On this wiki page, I see all these fighters, and I see that this division is just lacking in talent. It's got to be due to lacking in talent. What do you think?
Well, I agree. I think Nunes should fight instead of Tate or Holm. I'm not saying they should have taken Tate's shot away. I would have fine either way if they went with Tate as well, especially with the knockout or knockdown power she's shown her last fight. But the Holm fight makes sense to me in what they're probably trying to do. Basically, it's another feather in Ronda Rousey's cap. She's beaten strikers, she's beaten grapplers, she's beaten silver medal wrestlers. Now she's going to beat a boxing champ. And they're just going to feed her another great person for her resume. And if she only has a few fights left, maybe that's why they're doing it. Now, I'm not saying she does, but there's a lot of talk about, she's going to do movies and come back that's my guess there. So I'd go with Nunes. I think she's a better shot. But Holly Holm, she's a boxer. She's got great footwork. She's not going to allow, Rousey to come rush in on her, at least not for the first, couple of minutes, I think. And I'm going to be bold, Jay. I'm going to be real bold right now. And I'm going to pick Ronda Rousey to win this fight. So even
really
though
bold,
I'm excited about the fight with Holly Holm, I'm excited about this fight, but Rousey's going to fight.
Here's the thing, looking over at Holly Holm's fights, her last fight was against Marion Renault. Okay, decision. Her fight before that was against Raquel Pennington, a split decision win. And then when you go back further,
there for a second,
let's talk about this though. Those are the only 2 fights she's had in the UFC.
Right.
The only 2 fights she's had in the UFC. Before that, it was all legacy fights. That says a lot to me. It tells me right there that the UFC is lacking in talent in this division, and that's the reason why they just put up Holly Holm in this next fight against Ronda Rousey. There's nobody out there that, Tate's lost to her twice. So they know that she's most likely going to lose to her again at this point. So they're just throwing a new name in there. And why
Well,
not
yeah, I
Holly
mean
Holm?
Rousey's beaten all these people already, so it's not just that she's far better. It's or that maybe the division is weak, and I don't know if the division's super weak or
And
anything like that.
it's not
But
just that, Mike. I'm not saying that the division itself is super weak. I'm saying Ronda Rousey's just on a whole nother level.
right,
She's at least 4 levels up from every
yeah,
one of these women in this division. And that's the problem the UFC has. So, I'm going to throw something out there, and it's probably going to sound crazy to the world and to you, Mike. It may sound crazy, but here's what I think the UFC should do. Okay. If Ronda Rousey's not going to take a break, go do movies and bring on, and them have this new talent or this up and coming talent to get seasoned and to get better, and then have Ronda Rousey come back, here's what the UFC should do. Ronda, we're pulling in the 145 Invicta, folks, and you're going up to 145.
yeah. I've liked to see that for a while. And they brought the strawweights over, they brought the bantamweights over from there. So why not go up to another weight class?
Yeah. And I think they
don't
force
think
her
she
to
has
go up to
fight
145
Cyborg for her legacy, but I want to see it.
No. But that's not the point. The point is she's on such another level from these
Yeah.
women that they
Yep.
force her to go to 145. Because let's face it, she can fight at 145 right now.
Yeah,
She can fight and
Oh, I agree.
dominate at 145 right now. The only fighter that I think she would have any tough time with is Cyborg. And yes, maybe I'm being selfish. I want to see that fight.
no, that's not being selfish. I want to see that fight. I mean, I think she beat Cyborg, but I agree with you that it's going to be her toughest,
Yeah.
fight not just to date, but probably in her career.
But do you think that's
Um,
that's crazy that I would think that the UFC should actually force her to go up to 145 and bring in the Invicta 145ers?
I don't think they would do that. I mean, I want to see that happen, but I don't think they're going to waste. I shouldn't say waste.
It's
They're
not
not
waste.
going to mess
Yeah.
with their cash cow and have her not fight when they can, have her fight people like, retreads and people that shouldn't be there. And let me just go back really quick on something I want to point out is that with Holly Holm, I agree. She really shouldn't be fighting yet. She's had the 2 fights in the UFC, but I disagree with the Renault fight. I think she looked excellent in the Renault fight in so much as she never got touched. She made Renault, pull guard. She made Renault look silly. The problem with Holly Holm is that she's not knocking anybody out.
Yeah.
The drive isn't there to finish these girls. And I don't know. And that's a problem when you go against a killer like Rousey.
Yes, you hit it right on the head, Mike. I don't think Holm has the ability to hurt Rousey enough to keep her at bay. That is the problem I have with Holm. Now, she has some good leg strikes, some kicks that she could use that could keep her at bay. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I think that she has good leg kicks and stuff. But as for knockout power, especially with her hands, it's just not there. It's not going to keep her back. Rousey, I'm calling it right now. Rousey finishes her in the first round. The first round.
I agree with that.
She's done. I think what happens is Holly Holm tries to throw those lackluster punches that she does. She has no power behind her punches, none. She's probably, the only boxer I've ever seen in history that's a winning boxer that has like the worst punches I've ever seen. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm being like I'm totally poo-pooing Holly Holm, okay? She's got some great leg kicks, Mike. I'll give her that. It's just her punching. I think Ronda Rousey's just going to go right through them and just take her down and sub her.
Yeah, and she can't kick during this fight because it's easier to get taken down when you throw leg kicks. And so I don't think she's going to do many leg kicks. So we're back to her punching power.
Yeah.
And, but she's got the movement. So, it's going to take one of those surprise, maybe stunning jabs followed with a great combination to wobble Ronda Rousey. So there's a way for this to go Holly Holm's way. It's just that it's going to take a lot for that to happen compared to what Ronda Rousey can do. And I agree. We both agree it's going to end in the first round. But Jay, you talked about a revelation earlier on in this, in our podcast and what you thought. I believe you're talking about the 145 division. My revelation for you would be, if I'm in Vegas, I'm dropping $100 on Holly Holm. And the reason I say that, even though I'm picking Ronda Rousey, is that anything can happen, and she's at like plus 800 something. I'm willing to throw $100 down the drain on a former boxing champion, to get it done. I don't know about you.
I'm not willing to lose $100. That's the bottom line. I think nobody beats Ronda Rousey at this point. That's why I say the UFC should force her to go up to 145 and bring in Cyborg. That's the fight that everybody wants. That's the fight that would sell so many pay-per-views. I'll go on record as saying that is probably going to be the top-selling pay-per-view ever for the UFC.
Well, let me tell you this. There's been talk about basically the reason they gave her Holly Holm. Well, there's two things that I'll go with one first. What I thought originally, which is that Ronda Rousey is almost done fighting. And so it's a feather in her cap to defeat this accomplished boxer. So that's why they're giving her home. She's only got a few fights left in her. Give it to her now. The other thing people are talking about, and I don't claim to have come up with this, just because, look, when you love the sport, you listen to other people. And I'm going to give people their props. And that is, it could be Tate Cyborg that night also, or down the line. And if Cyborg beats Tate, then you've got the UFC 200 card, and you've got Cyborg versus Rousey at UFC 200. And how crazy would that be, Jay?
Yeah, that would be amazing. And like I said, the most selling pay-per-view in UFC's history. But
yeah, and
hands down.
That's pure speculation now. That's just what people are talking about. Because the UFC has given money to, I forget what they call it, not the UFC, but what the sports people call it, but kind of like, take a seat money. Like, because they're going to go somewhere else. So it's possible that Tate, is angry about losing the fight, but maybe she's got a little bit of money on the side from Uncle Dana. And I respect the UFC, but, sometimes this is the fight business to sit this one out. And, I'm excited if that's how they're going. Because Cyborg fights an accomplished 135-pounder in Miesha Tate. And if she finishes Miesha Tate, there's no denying her fighting Ronda Rousey.
Yeah. I'd love to see that personally. And that is amazing. If that were to happen, that would be so amazing. Man, what a big card that would be for UFC 200, right? Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. But Mike, at this point, until that happens, I don't see her getting beat by anybody until, and I'm not saying Cyborg beats her either. I'm not saying that. I still think she beats Cyborg. I really do think she would sub Cyborg. I think
really, it's in the first round as well, Jay. That's what I think. I called it early in the first round on Cyborg.
Really? I do. I wouldn't say that. I think it might go into the second or third, but yeah, not getting out of the third. I think she would sub her by then. But
I wouldn't find that
bold.
surprising, Jay. It's just my gut feeling. I certainly wouldn't find that surprising if it went to the third. Miesha Tate took her to the third.
Yeah. So I'm just basically looking at it from the standpoint that Cyborg does have heavy hands, but Ronda's game is just complete.
But this is the weight cut also with Cyborg. She's going to be fighting at 135 and not 145. How much muscle does she retain? How much of her quickness and her, her fighting style does she get at 135? I ask these questions because I honestly don't know. She might be quicker, but she might lose some power. And is it going to matter?
Yeah. And in the end, is it going to matter anyway? We both think Ronda's going to win. So even at 145, I would choose Ronda. I'd throw money on Ronda any day. So anyway, guys, you know what? You're part of the think tank, everybody. If you want to weigh in on this question, do you think Holly Holm should be fighting Ronda Rousey next? If not, let us know. We have a call-in number, 925-237-1296. That's 925-237-1296. You guys can leave us a message there. And we'd love to hear your opinions on this. You can also weigh in on Facebook at MMA Think Tank Podcast and email us as well at mmathinktank@gmail.com.
Jay, we just talked about probably the biggest fight the beginning of next year. But one other fight that's been released as well, and it's going to take place as the main event at the TUF 22 finale, is Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Tony El Cucuy Ferguson. And I am so excited for that fight. Khabib Nurmagomedov has not fought in almost 2 years. He's had a knee injury. He's undefeated. He just rolls through guys. But Ferguson, Jay, he's a scrapper. He was my ladder climber for last month, and he's looking good as well, Jay. What do you feel on this one?
You're saying Khabib hasn't fought in 2 years?
Yeah.
Doesn't he fight? Didn't he just fight with the Diaz brothers in the audience of a World Series of Fighting?
A sanctioned fight, Jay. Yes.
Oh, okay. And isn't he always running his mouth all over Twitter as well? Like, this guy has been one of those guys who's constantly in the limelight, it seems, but he's not fighting. And, look, I'm not taking anything away from Khabib. Khabib is a good fighter. Obviously, look at his record. The guy has been pretty dominant in the UFC.
And he's beat the champ. He's beat Dos Anjos. So
yes, he has beat Dos Anjos, but I will go on record as saying that he beat a human Dos Anjos. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into it, but he beat a human Dos Anjos. I don't know about this new Dos Anjos. But that was his last fight. Okay. Before that, he hasn't really fought the greatest of people in the UFC. So for him to talk as much smack as he does on Twitter against other fighters, I think he's being a little bit premature in all that talk. What do you think about that?
Yeah, he's looked well. I mean, he's got some decision wins along with the finishes. So I agree with you. He hasn't fought a lot of great guys when you look at who he's fought. Dos Anjos is the one lone guy that is in the top 5, maybe top 10. And you talk about him talking and everything, is people on the sites, I look at the sites to read the news, and I also want to see what people are thinking. I want to know what you guys are thinking out there as well. And people put this guy on a pedestal, and obviously the guy's undefeated. He's a great fighter, but I'm tired of hearing about him while he's not fighting, but now he's finally going to fight. And I'm going to pick, I guess, Khabib now. But Ferguson, look, with this layoff that Khabib has, and Ferguson, if you remember his last fight, the guy is a wizard on the ground. His scrambles, getting off of his back. How's the knee going to be with Nurmagomedov?
Yeah.
With and this is going to be a 5-round fight, folks. And Ferguson is a tough guy. He can take it. So it could be like a 4-round, a 4th round. Ferguson subs him, or who knows, Jay?
Well,
it could be go anywhere.
When you look at their records, they've fought pretty much the same people in the UFC. I mean, they both fought Abel Trujillo, Gleison Tibau. But if you look at the actual fights, Ferguson has actually finished some of those fighters, whereas on the other hand, you have decision wins with Khabib. And one thing I will say about Khabib is his striking. Now, he has heavy hands, Mike, but he has a problem with putting his head down, closing his eyes, and throwing haymakers.
Never good.
I see him do that a lot. And while they do connect at times, that's not a good idea to come in with your eyes closed or to be looking down. He does it a lot. I've rewatched some of his fights, and in my opinion, he's gotten pretty lucky with some of those haymakers.
Jay, he can do that with the guys he's fought, but he can't do that with Ferguson. His striking is way too. It's way better.
Yeah,
way better.
That's why I'm not immediately jumping on the Khabib bandwagon. I'm not jumping and saying, "Hey, Khabib's going to win this fight." But I will say Khabib's wrestling is great. He's got a great wrestling game, Mike, and who knows where this fight's going to go. But at this point, I may even give it to Ferguson right now if I were to pick.
Yeah, that's why I brought up how good he is off of his back, off his scrambling ability, and the knee, as I said before with Nurmagomedov, how healed is it going to be? But Ferguson is on such a tear, Jay, and I'm a big Ferguson fan, and I'm trying to make sure that my head and my heart are aligned on this pick. So right off the bat, I'm picking Nurmagomedov probably by decision. But if it gets finished, Jay, I think it's going to be Ferguson, and he can do it, like you said. He can do it, and if he does do it, what a jump from ranked number 10 to beating the number 2 guy in the division.
Yeah.
That's what's not being told.
Yeah, and for Khabib to be number 2 in the division, I think is kind of odd. Looking back at the fighters that he's fought, I know he hasn't lost in a while, but that was over 2 years ago. And you're talking about a Dos Anjos 2 years ago. Again, a human Dos Anjos 2 years ago, guys. I really don't see him even touching Dos Anjos right now with the way Dos Anjos is fighting. I don't see him getting close to beating Dos Anjos.
I don't know. I might disagree with you there, just in how far you took it. I think it's going to be a closer fight. It just depends on what Khabib shows up and what kind of Dos Anjos we have. Since July, because after Dos Anjos' next fight, we're going to see what the drug tests have done.
That's
you
true.
know, from the UFC.
That's
so
true.
We're going to see now. Dos Anjos can still be really good and still knock out Cowboy. You know, in the title defense. But it may not even be Dos Anjos he's fighting. It could be Cowboy that he's fighting. So you know, we'll see.
It could be with all the new drug anti-doping programs, you know, that they're involved with in the UFC. It could be Cowboy because of that, I will say. But if that has not affected Dos Anjos in any way, I say Dos Anjos wins hands down, and Khabib will be fighting Dos Anjos in the future. But you know what? I would rather see a Khabib Cowboy fight and Cowboy taking it to Khabib. That would make my day.
Well, that was the last fight that they were going to do, and then he hurt his knee again.
Yeah.
I'm excited for that fight as well.
Yeah, that would make my night. You know, Mike, we've been discussing a lot of upcoming fights here tonight, but we've also been doing a lot of discussions over on blab.im. You could head on over there using a Chrome browser. You can actually just hop in and see us every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Pacific time, live on Blab. It's a great site to interact with us with, and you get to hear the podcast, and it's great stuff.
Yeah, Jay, I enjoy it. I love doing the podcast here. But the blab.im stuff is really fun. You get to see who you're actually talking to. You get to read all stuff and what's going on the sides. I mean, it's a really interactive experience, and I enjoy every minute of it.
Yeah, it definitely is awesome. So check it out. There's also an iOS app you can download now in the iTunes store. That would be Blab. It's there now, and you guys can use it on your phone. So you can check us out on Thursday nights on your phone. There's also a lot of other discussions there. There's some podcasts there and stuff that you can watch as well. We're not the only ones, but we're the only mixed martial arts podcast there.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and it's a fun time. So come and visit us there at blab.im, Thursday, 6 p.m. Pacific time.
Yeah, you know, Jay, really it's what the MMA Think Tank is all about, because we're all discussing at the same time the fights and what's going on, you know, with each other visually, but also, you know, just checking out the comments. It's a great experience.
Yeah, so check us out there. So that's the end of this episode, Mike.
Yeah, sounds good. I guess we'll do a podcast after 191 with Mighty Mouse and John Dodson. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. 191, Dodson versus Johnson 2. We will be back after that fight. And yeah, we did say we were gonna be on a hiatus, guys, but we just couldn't stay gone. So yes, we're back. So again, before I let you guys go, the number for the podcast show is 925-237-1296. And the email is mmathinktank@gmail.com. And you guys can call or leave a message or come by the Facebook page at MMA Think Tank Podcast. And just give us some opinions there. Let us know what's going on. You're all part of the think tank, and we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, guys.
We go.